It's an extraordinarily difficult thing to be able to relate to something one doesn't know. And whether we're talking about the Sudan, or whether we're talking about the average person in central France, or up on a hill in Colorado, if you haven't experienced the oceans firsthand, you may not understand why I'm up here talking about its importance and how that reflects very much in our very own economic and health, personal health. The human-ocean connection is one that courses in our veins, whether we're on top of a mountain skiing 1,000 miles away from the oceans or on the ocean front. The things that we do to the oceans happen to us. I remember growing up, the planet did not look like this. Unfortunately, it's starting to increasingly culminate the global actions or inactions that we have burdened it with. Now, personally, I don't want to tell bad stories. I don't want to go out there and tell you that we dump over 1 million pounds of plastics in our oceans every day, or that we lost 60% of our food resources in the oceans, or that by and large, we're going to hell in a handbasket, because that's not it. Without hope, we do not win the war. It's about outside of the box thinking. I travel a lot, just like most of you crazy people out there, you're out-of-the-box thinkers, the ones that make things happen. But how many times have we been confronted with a breakfast like this? 12 single-use pieces of plastic. I'm not against plastic, but why is it that we use things that last 500 years for something we use for 1 hour or less? The average person uses 12 single-use pieces of plastic. How do we change that? Well, I'm happy to say that things are changing around the world, and out-of-the-box thinkers that are innovators, that are people that run companies or governments, or at least pieces of the government, are able to change things. Even in LaGuardia Airport, we're seeing change. Sustainable plates and cups and so on and so forth. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at a bank account that's very quickly going bankrupt. Well, why is that important? Well, because whether you live on the ocean front 1,000 miles away, it affects you in very fundamental ways. We did an expedition on orcas, as you saw in that little piece. The orcas are getting all sorts of weird, nasty things from flame retardants and all sorts of other chemicals that I will not worry with. I keep promising that, I keep talking about it. But the data that's coming out of those orcas and their mortality rates and everything else is very much a reflection of what's happening to our species, our children, and ourselves. So how do we get people motivated? Well, I'm a big fan of adventure. I'm a big fan of exploration. And although there's been a lot of exploration, we talk about Discovery and Nat Geo and my grandfather's shows and many others, we've explored less than 5% of our ocean world. Less than 5%. So there's a lot left to be discovered out there. Why don't we use that as the key to get people to understand, the key to get people to love, to get motivated, to cherish, to be better stewards of our planet. One of the things that I really loved when I was growing up was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Not the Disney version, but nonetheless, it was pretty amazing. I dreamt of living under the water, of exploring, of being being Aquaman, really. I just wish we perfected the gills that you could put behind your ears so that you never had to come back up. 1963, my grandfather was actually he was the first one to build underwater habitats. He took his team off Port Sudan for over 30 days to live and work and do science underwater. He was the first one to film underwater for that period of time. Smoke and drink as well. An aquanaut is defined by someone who lives and works underwater for more than 24 hours at pressure depth. How many of you are divers? A few of you? If you're divers? Good. For those who aren't, there's a limit to being able to stay underwater. And it's based on saturation. It's based on your decompression obligations and the amount of gas that you have with you, or air, if you will. Once you are saturated, meaning once your body takes on the maximum amount of gases, you have a very long decompression obligation depending on your depth. So these folks, once they went down, were not able to come back up until the end of the mission. That was 50 years ago this year. There's only one undersea habitat in the world. It's called Aquarius. It's 9 miles offshore of Key Largo, 63 feet down. There have been more astronauts in history than there have ever been aquanauts. Going back to what I said earlier, how do you get people to understand and care about our planet and realize that just because you care about a whale or a dolphin or a tiger or whatever, it's about our natural resource bank, and really at the end of the day, it's about us. Well, you make them dream. When was the last time we dreamt about something like Apollo or the moon landing? Yes, we can talk about the Mars, going and colonizing Mars, but I bet you no matter what, it's not going to be as pretty as it is here. It will be really fun and interesting, but it's not going to happen for another 20 years. So how do we get kids and how do we get other people to dream, to fall in love? I'm going to take a team for 31 days to live and work underwater at this habitat called Aquarius in October. But beyond this, which is the first time that's happened since my grandfather, we're going to be using it as an education platform to broadcast live from underwater every 2 hours for 31 days to schools around the world, all 7 continents, yes, including Antarctica, and outer space. Because by being able to allow the world to come in on a very real-time basis, we're taking one step further from what other pioneers like my grandfather's been able to do, to absorb that curiosity and give it back in a way that's thrilling, that's interesting, that shows what these underwater cities are doing, why we should care, why are we talking about climate change, why are we talking about all these things that seemingly are very scientific and potentially even a turnoff, in a way that is adventurous, in a way that is like a mix between Big Brother and something that NOAA or NASA would be proud of.